Well, hey, first of all, thanks for the invitation to come and speak to you all today. Thanks for the pizza. For the forum to talk about blockchains. See a few faces in the crowd that I recognize. My name is Mike Cromheecke, and I am the co-founder of a company we call SteamChain. And STEAM actually stands for Secure Transaction Engine for Automated Machinery. My co-founder and I, Tom Tichy, spent the last 18 years of our careers working in industrial manufacturing. Specifically, myself, 18 years with a company by the name of Rockwell Automation that supplies some of the world's leading manufacturers with their computer systems, network systems, software systems that run advanced manufacturing today. And that's where I met Tom. What SteamChain is doing and why it's relevant to this blockchain conversation today is we're using the data from industrial machines to enable new business models for manufacturers. Little bit of the history of data collection in manufacturing to kind of lay the ground. Let me ask a question first of the audience. Who here has some manufacturing background? Worked in a plant, spent some time around industrial machinery? All right, good. The challenge is not necessarily collecting that data. These machines have been intelligent since the 70s when the programmable logic controller was invented. Right? It kind of grew up with the evolution of the personal computer market. Right? You've got these machines and they get more and more intelligent. They used to be these mechanical contraptions where things just happened. And then they started becoming electronic machines and they afforded you a certain advanced level of control. And then that electronic machine started to get a computer brain and it started collecting data and information about how things were happening. About 20 years ago, that data started being transmitted off that machine through various different types of networks back to centralized servers, and that data was collected, and you could analyze that data and learn certain things about your production, about what's going on in your plant. And then they started connecting those machines and that data set to the internet. They called that remote monitoring. And that's been going on forever. Today they call that the Internet of Things. But it's not a new phenomenon. Now everybody's talking about how do we take that data and do something useful with it. And I thought the conversation earlier today was really relevant because when you talk about sharing data across organizations, things get really complicated really quick. There's the question of ownership of that data. Who gets to use it? How do they get to use it? When do they get to use it? And this is the problem, the challenge that we identified as an opportunity to really expand the use cases of machinery data coming off of this equipment, which we've had for years, but it hasn't really created a revolution. It hasn't really created much of a difference at all because there's limitations in how you use it. We believe the way to use that data is to attack one of the central problems, which is the acquisition of capital assets in the manufacturing industry. Today, it's extremely inefficient. When you go out and buy $1 million manufacturing machine, piece of equipment, you're doing so on a project basis. You contract with a machine builder based on a set of specifications. I need a machine that runs 200 pieces per minute. And they quote it, and a number of other companies do as well, and you select one of those companies and you say, great, build me that machine. You pay them a bunch of money up front, and you keep your fingers crossed, okay? They go ahead and spend that money on the labor and the material and the equipment necessary to put that machine together. And right about the time when it's almost done, you get to go to their factory, take a look at it, make sure it's still looking good, right? This isn't like going down the street and buying a car, all right? They're not producing these things in the hundreds of thousands. So you have to check in on your investment. If it looks good, you're thinking it's going to help you in your challenge to produce, you give them the next payment, and they ship that machine to you with a team of technicians and engineers that set it up in your factory. Okay? Now you have a limited window of opportunity to run that machine and test it out. at which point the final payment is due and that machine is yours, including any problem that it may have. Okay, that's the site acceptance. You sign off on the machine, you write the check, you own it, you own the challenges with it. That's how it works today. Whether you're the OEM building the machine, the financier who's providing capital, or the end user that has to run it, what you're buying is a physical asset. What you want and what you need is an outcome. You need that machine to produce something. That physical asset is literally a boat anchor unless it achieves some kind of production requirement that motivated you to purchase it to begin with. At SteamChain, we see this problem. We also see this lack of application of industrial data as an opportunity to change the dynamic for how industrial equipment is purchased. All right? And we do that using machine as a service business models. From feature enablement, the ability to turn on and off capabilities on a piece of equipment post-sale, to automated service agreements, where how that machine is running and the duration with which it runs drive the automatic service that that machine requires to optimize its output. Performance-based warranties and the whole conversation about insurance, I think is particularly relevant here. Because again, you don't buy a packaging machine because you've always wanted to own $1 million packaging machine. You bought it because you need that thing to produce 400 packages per minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right? That's how you make money operating that kind of equipment. The idea that you can warrant the outcome of that machine as part of the purchase contract begins to sell the outcome and not necessarily the asset itself. And of course, a full articulation of that concept would be some form of usage-based finance. The interesting thing about all of these business models is they exist today in lots of different contexts. If you're in the office printer market, you're buying a printer or a set of printers on some sort of usage-based contract where how you operate those, how many pages you print, how much ink you're using. The service contract is all bundled together and monitored by a particular vendor. It exists in the aircraft industry for jet engines, where GE puts in a huge proprietary system that monitors the performance of all the engines that they sold you and charges you as you use them. These business models are not new, but they're particularly difficult to deploy in a manufacturing context when you might have 27 or 50 different machinery manufacturers on your floor. Having a proprietary solution for each one of those folks is not necessarily an easy way to go or an efficient way to deploy this type of technology, because it really requires trust between the people that are operating the equipment, the people that they bought that equipment from, that are monetizing that, and having the systems to do it. And that's where we think SteamChain comes in and can allow the deployment of that across multiple machines in a standardized way to share this information around business models that allow you to monetize the outcome. Very simply, and I know there's probably a lot of technologists in the room, be happy to go a little bit deeper, but our system looks like this. It's data collected by the machine. Again, this data already exists, it's sitting there for the taking, managed in the cloud by SteamChain, and recorded in a blockchain protocol. We choose Ethereum right now, but we're fairly agnostic and can shift pretty easily as the technology evolves. Of course, and I lost my graphic there. Of course, collecting the data is just one aspect of it. You need to actually do something with that data. And so this would be smart contracts. We tend not to use the language smart contracts. We call them automated transactions, and I'll explain why in a bit. But there's an agreement between the stakeholders. Again, encoded in SteamChain, in our platform, but transacted in a blockchain protocol, so that all parties have visibility to what the agreement is, they have visibility to the data that's going into that contract, and they can see it, they can audit it, they can look back on it, and it's not controlled by any individual party. If somebody stops paying their bill, it doesn't mean that the contracts go away, or that one party takes the data and goes home, right? That's what we think is critically important and what's prevented this from happening in the past. I'll be brief on this one. There's a lot of information up here, but by way of an example, today, if you're buying a canning line, for instance, to can beer, that might be a $700,000 investment. And the outcome of which, you're hoping you can do 35 cans a minute. Whether you can or not, at the end of it, is very difficult to determine up front. You choose the best partner you can, and if it doesn't produce 35 a minute, the OEM, the machine builder, certainly isn't going to say that was our fault. They're going to say your operators don't know how to run it, right? You're not maintaining it well. You've got all these other problems on your upstream equipment or your downstream equipment that prevent it from achieving performance. As the end user, you're going to feel like, no, that's all nonsense. Your machine is a piece of junk, right? But there's no way to take all the subjectivity out of that and have a fact-based discussion around what the machine is actually doing and why. All right. But if those two parties, up front of the agreement, said, we will buy the machine for a fixed amount, and we will pay you as we produce on that machine. So if we produce 35 a minute, the price is performance level 1, it's a per can and a per time-based price, in addition to the fixed cost up front, and that's the terms of the contract. That gets monitored, all sides see it. Now, and it pays out according to the terms of the contract. That's great, right? The question I always get is, yeah, but what if it's not my fault, right? So why should I suffer because he doesn't know how to run his machine? And actually, I think that's exactly the right model, because it puts the people that build the machine and the people that operate the machine on the same team with the exact same financial interests. It doesn't matter whose fault it is, and it shouldn't matter, right? That OEM should take care of their customer because it's the right thing to do. They should take care of their customer because that's why they're going to make the most money. So if it's a problem with the machine, then they need to design a better machine next time so that the operators can better handle it. You are incentivized to produce it in a way that they can consume it, which is a very big shift in the way we think about how the equipment is paid for and monetized. Of course, if you overachieve, there's an opportunity for incremental revenue, right? So as the machine is more productive for the end user, the OEM shares in that reward. Whether it's feature enablement, whether it's automated service agreements, performance, warranty, usage-based financing, the relationship and the risk calculation between the people that produce equipment, the people that operate, the people who finance it, and potentially even the people that insure it, really changes. And managing that and managing the data from that is what SteamChain does. I'm not going to get deep into this slide, but I'm guessing there's some technical folks in the room, and we can talk about that later if you have any questions about it. We'll jump into it, but I do want to talk a little bit about blockchain and why we use it and why we think it's important. So I added a couple of slides knowing that that was really the topic of conversation today. But I'll pause here and see if there's any questions and maybe make the back half of this thing more of an open dialogue about blockchain and why we think blockchain is not only meaningful here, but necessary to actually execute this. So any questions so far? In the back there. Well, in the middle there.
So you're using Ethereum. Do you think it's, I don't know if I missed this, do you think it's important that you use a public ledger versus like a semi-private private ledger?
Yeah, we actually don't. We feel like Ethereum right now has all the capabilities that we need and is the best platform for us to grow with in the early stages. We see longer term though that consortium blockchains may actually be the right choice of data structure for this. So we are talking to some of the technologists in that field that are proposing different architectures and thinking about, okay, what does this look like, especially as you get to scale? Because there's certain costs associated with the public blockchain that may be avoided when you start getting into a consortium blockchain, and especially as you start deploying this in large enterprise manufacturing. those manufacturers may actually want to participate in the chain itself. And so we built our technology with a very simple service bus that allows us to direct the data to a blockchain protocol of our choosing. And that can be multiple different ones, and we can switch based on the customer's needs and requirements. So, but yeah, thank you for the question. It's a good one. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a blunt question?
Blunt, absolutely.
Why is this better than a database?
Why is this better than a database? The challenge with a database is who is going to own that database and where is it going to reside. So if you have a database, and let's say I'm the database, SteamChain is the database, and we're going to collect this, and we're going to be that independent third party, and we're going to host everybody's data, and we're going to reconcile that and make sure the payments are distributed appropriately, right? It would be a significantly less expensive system to build. It would be significantly faster in its execution, right? We could do a lot of things a lot more efficiently, there's no question. What happens when we go out of business? What happens when we raise our rates for the subscription, right? The idea that this data is hypercritical to these manufacturers on both sides. The idea that they're gonna hand the keys to this to some independent third party and hope for the best when it's so fundamental to their business, I think is the challenge that we avoid when we make sure we use a data structure that allows transparent access for an extended period of time, either on a public blockchain protocol or on a consortium that they all kind of trust in that doesn't have one point of failure. That would be my answer to that. Question?
What do you mean when you say our tokens are pegged to the US dollar by SteamChain?
So we are not a cryptocurrency company. Let's start there, right? We're not trying to trade Steam coins and let that float against the currency. We deal in US dollars. We would get laughed out of the room, the customer base that we go see, if we came in and told them they needed to start paying for their production with some kind of cryptocurrency. We of course need some form of token to represent the distribution of value. And so we just created one that we basically fix against the US dollar so that one Steam coin equals a dollar, allows us to keep track of everything in our quote unquote currency, but we distribute it in dollars. We still deal with Ether and we deal with paying for the gas. We actually handle that risk and hedge against that. But our customers, we don't ever talk about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. We very rarely talk about blockchain at all.
Oh, just a follow-up to that.
Follow up.
So in that case then, like, so you're basically the sole token holder. In that case, isn't there like a centralized risk of you guys potentially like losing the assets if there's a hack or something?
So but what assets would we be losing?
I guess the tokens that you've created.
The tokens that
are backed, I guess, like by US dollars that you get from your customers, right?
Right, not backed by US dollars,
Okay.
right? I don't know if that would be the right way to say it.
Pegged,
Pegged to the US dollar.
Yeah.
The currency itself is handled with the Nacha system and ACH transfers. We're keeping the records of what transfers need to take place based on the production data coming in. We use what I call the coin to basically as a representative token of a US dollar. So if 100 units are produced, right, the smart contract says, okay, move 10 coins for every 100 units that are produced from A to B, right? We interpret that on the backside and then use the traditional way of transferring those funds based on the data that we're receiving out of it. They can go back and look to say, okay, this is what got transferred. But the token itself, if somebody hacked the system and stole it, would not necessarily be useful or valuable to them, if that makes sense. Couple in the back?
Yeah, I was going to push a little bit harder on the database question.
Yeah.
So, because like the point of, so why not cut out the middleman in this case? So if I'm the manufacturer, if I'm the machine maker,
Yeah.
and this is the better business model for me to sell, buy a can as opposed to buy the machine, why am I not just doing that directly with my customer as opposed to working through a third party, whether they're trusted or not?
Yeah, no, great question. Couple things. Sorry, hold on, wait. To lean.
I'm trying to do seats back here.
Yeah, a couple of things. So if I understand your question right, is hey, why don't I just work with each and every one of my machine builders, contract with them directly? Of course, you're going to have some kind of system to collect that data. There needs to be some way to roll that up and to automate the process of distributing that. And you need to trust each and every one, and it may be multiple different systems. So one of the values has got nothing to do with blockchain. It's having a centralized or a standard non-proprietary version of data collection and business model generation for this industry. The second question, if I understood, I think it was deeper than that, because if maybe I didn't understand, but why do you need, once this gets deployed and you're comfortable with doing blockchain work yourself, why do you need SteamChain at all? Why can't you just use Ethereum?
Blockchain.
Yeah.
If I'm trusting, if I'm the purchaser of the machine and I'm trusting that the data the machine is generating is valid, right? And I can see it on my dashboard, and it's getting beamed over the internet to the manufacturer. We're both seeing the same data. Where is the
why can't I set up my own contract?
Yeah.
And the answer is you can, right? And in fact, long term, I think you will. And so in a way, I think there's a window of opportunity to help people get there. The manufacturers, the customers we're talking about today are not going to go out and start writing their own blockchain contracts. There's going to need to be standards around how that's done. There's going to need to be guidance given to them and some framework built. So long term, I don't think the value that SteamChain will have is around just the simple act of creating a smart contract. The value that SteamChain will begin to have is about the consolidation of all that data, creating really exceptional what we call modules or templates of how to interface, so that you don't have to kind of bake your own contracts every time, but you can kind of grab this one that it kind of represents what we want to do, modify it the way we want to do it, know it's tested, trusted, comes with the appropriate paperwork, and is easy and quick to execute. So it's more of a service than it is something that you couldn't otherwise build yourself, long term, right? And so we think there's a need for that, especially in the early stages to get it going. Other questions? So we covered a lot of this already, and the guys from American Family as well did an excellent job kind of giving an overview of blockchain. But we really see the ability to automate the process as being a key aspect here. I was with a machine builder last week that has been investing in industrial Internet of Things, as they call it, collecting data off their equipment. They're extremely progressive in their industry, and they've got all this data from all the new machines that they're selling coming back to them. And I said, "What do you do with it?" And they said, "Well, nothing." Right? It's great to have when something happens, but we don't do anything proactively. In fact, one of our customers called us and said, "Hey, my machine is running terrible, and I think there's a problem with it." And we looked at his data, and sure enough, the machine's been running terrible for 6 months. But we don't have the bandwidth required to sit and monitor every machine that we have in the field. We need rules. We need systems that automate that process. And they hadn't even started thinking about how do they monetize that. Today, they don't make any money delivering that. So the state of the industry is a big victory just to get data off a machine. And then that leads to the next question is, what do we do with it? Okay, we can't sit there and monitor all the time, so now we have to write code that does some kind of monitoring function. Then the next question is, how are we getting paid to do all this? right? And that's where we're at, is how do you create business models that automatically execute based on the data from automated machineries so that the business model is automated as well. And the performance of that machine directly drives the financial performance of those OEMs. We think progressive OEMs that really want to participate as partners with their customers and benefit from the high quality of equipment and support that they provide over the life cycle of the equipment will choose SteamChain for just that reason, because it affords them the opportunity to be a true partner in optimizing the efficiency of their machines. Any other questions? Right up here.
What are some of the machines you're partnering with right now?
So we do, fundamentally based on our background, I've got 17 years working with high-speed packaging OEMs. Those machines are really extraordinary devices. They're complex in that they run super fast. We're doing some work in converting, which is also another very high-speed machine, very high-tech machines. Converting is paper converting, so it's things like diapers and all the toilet paper and all the different things that you make out of bulk pulp, and they run at 1,200 a minute, 1,400 a minute. Same with packaging machines. There's a tremendous variety of packaging machines. As much variety of machines as there are package formats that you see on the grocery store or gas station shelf. Automated assembly, so any kind of high-speed, high-technology part production, as well as a little bit in some maybe more traditional kind of metal fastening, metal forming industries as well. It's mainly based on our personal backgrounds. Given that we're early stage, we're kind of talking to the people that we know. But we don't see a real limit to how this could be deployed across the entire class of machines, both industrial and commercial. So we do get calls fairly frequently from agriculture and construction equipment companies that are very interested in these concepts and these business models. We get calls and talk to the folks in the healthcare industry that are running very expensive, very technical pieces of equipment as well. And so we've got some conversations with those folks as well about how and why this might work in their industries.
So the data that you're getting from all the machines, where are you storing it? Is it on or off chain?
Both. So there's certain data that drives financial transactions that has to be on the chain. And so, but honestly, the amount of data that needs to be on chain is very small, because there's only a few things that actually drive the finances. How many are you producing? What is the state of that machine? How long is it running? Pretty simple data. But there's a whole bunch of value-added data that we can also collect and create visibility to both parties for, and we can do that off-chain. We can do that off-chain and hash that data set so you can make sure it's validated in the future if you want to make sure it's immutable by creating a fingerprint of it and storing that on-chain as well. So we kind of have a hybrid approach, and depending on what they want to collect, we do it in multiple different ways.
And another question.
Sure.
So do the machines have like an identity on the blockchain, or how are they?
The machine does have an identity. You're going to probably exceed my ability to describe that, but I know for a fact each machine has an address and a unique identifier, if I'm quoting my CTO correctly. Any other questions?
Could you go a little more into your business model?
What aspect of it?
Well, so earlier you talked about how long-term you don't see this, like you're hoping that long-term people will interact with their suppliers on their own. And so how do you plan to sustain yourself in the meantime?
Yeah, well, long-term people will interact with suppliers on their own, and we would encourage that. What we would today, I guess our business doesn't change that much. We create modules, kind of pre-formatted agreements that are configurable through our portal, through our utility, that they can have access to, where they can set it up and configure it how they want it and execute that in a very quick and simply to deliver way. Today, we probably are able to charge more on a per transaction basis than when everybody is able to do that. The prices will come down, but the volume will go up. I still think that the opportunity to provide them with pre-formatted, pre-tested modules that represent the kind of contracts that they want and configurable is going to be vastly superior to everybody writing their own contracts from scratch. So in a way, we think of ourselves as a company that templatizes the whole process and makes it easy to deploy, and we'll just price that capability based on what the market says is required, or says that the market is willing to bear, which may change over time because this can be done. But we also see this. We also see this as the kind of market that isn't going to have 57 different versions of one thing. There's going to be some natural tendency to want to standardize around some methodologies, some expectations on all sides. Any other questions? Got them all? I'll hang around for a bit if you guys want to chat a little bit more. Thank you for your time today.